Hi guys, welcome back. So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you all about my experience during Mod 2. Mod 2 was very different in a lot of ways. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. Very similar to Mod 1, you get your bags ready and you do your checklist again and everything like that. I did have a few weeks between my Mod 1 and my Mod 2. I went to Pirbright again. It is 1 week. So this time longer, and also you have the physical side, and that was something that I was feeling a little bit nervous about, especially when you haven't experienced army training before. I didn't know what to expect. I was just remaining really open-minded, thinking, okay, well, just prepare the best that we can. You also have the Army Fitness app to help you and guide you into all of your training and things like that. To prepare myself for Mod 2, I did a lot of weighted hikes, weighted runs, just normal runs, interval training, weight training, just to build up the stamina, build up the strength. That's pretty much what I did. So when I arrived at the barracks, it actually felt like I had never left. It was really crazy. I just said, I thought I was here not that long ago. It literally felt like seconds. Same ridiculous amount of stuff to be brought to. I did have a few people coming to the Mod 2 with me from my unit, so it was quite nice to have the same faces and just to know people there. It makes things that little bit easier. But the girl who I was with from my unit, she wasn't able to make Mod 2, so I was the only girl going, which I actually was sad about because it was very nice to have a girl there before, just to be in the dorm with, looking out for each other and having each other's backs, and that was really nice. So the same applied. You go in, you drop your bags off, they give you time to settle in and everything. Different girls this time, the same things applied with, they get you on the line, tell you the rules and everything like that, keep you up till late to make you tired. I was up at 4:30 the next day, and this time there was only 5 females there, so we got up, wait on the line, march everyone together. We had breakfast, but this time we had longer to eat. We had 20 minutes rather than 10, so that was a complete luxury and from scoffing my food in like 5 minutes. I was a creature of habit though. I did have exactly the same breakfast, the same big bowl of porridge, banana and 2 sausages. And a coffee. So on the first day, this is a bit like a tester day. So you had the same test as you did at the assessment day to make sure that you're definitely at the standard you were on assessment day to meet the minimal requirements for the role that you were going for. The first thing that they did, they got us to get in our ugly shorts, gym tops and water bottles, got us to the track. We had a warm-up little circuit round, and then I believe we had to run 5 laps. It still equals to 2 kilometers. They got us all on the line, counted us down, and everyone sprinted off at the start. I knew that if I sprinted off like everyone else did, I just would burn out and I just could not keep that level up. I just went at my own pace. I wanted to do exactly what I knew that I could do. I didn't want to be stupid and waste all of my energy within the first lap. A lot of the people did slow down pretty quickly though because they burnt themselves out. But after the 5 laps, one of the guys who wasn't the strongest of runners said that he had completed his 5th lap, but the PTs knew that he had only done 4. He lied to them, and that's a pretty big deal. So they actually RTU'd the guy, returned him back to unit because it was just a complete lack of integrity. Great start to the first day. After the running, we ended up jogging around the blocks, doing a couple of sprints up hills, and then we did sprints around the pitch, and that kind of summarized the first taste of the PT sessions. After your PT sessions, they do give you a good amount of time to go back to the block, have a quick shower. I used this opportunity to eat all of my food because I didn't actually know when I was going to be able to eat next. I just thought I'd rather fill myself up now than spend the rest of the day hungry. And also, when you've done a lot of running, it's just good to replenish yourself and refuel. So I always brought a lot of snacks with me, a lot of bars, protein bars and things like that to keep me going throughout the day. They also give you a fair bit of food, which I stash everything. You should have seen the amount of food I had in my cupboards. It was actually pouring out. So the first day was all about the introduction to the PT and then weapon handling. And also we knew that we were going to have a weapons handling test and also a few days on the rifle range. So super exciting. Throughout the week, that's mainly what it consisted of: weapon handling tests, getting all of our procedures correct and done, and then having the test. Everything is introduced in stages. They did start us off with a dummy rifle. That evening, we got taught survival training, which was really interesting. So we got to look at the ration packs, how to clean properly, cook properly, how to pack all of our burgers and our webbing. It was more in depth. We did briefly have that for Mod 1 too, but this was more in depth and they showed us how to do things. We got taught how to camouflage, and we did this challenge of being able to camouflage up properly, get into the bushes, get our hats full of twigs and make sure everything is done properly, and then get in a hole where you can't really be seen. I crammed myself underneath all the mud, the sticks. I literally covered everything in it, my face. There was quite a few of us in this bush, but everyone was really well camouflaged. And the corporals went past and I thought, yes, we've done it. We haven't been spotted. Someone just made a slight foot movement and we were caught. I was so gutted. But after that, we got our bashes out and we had to learn how to set up properly. We were challenged to who was the fastest to set up, take down. Then they actually gave us time to get inside and have a nap. It was getting to that point of day where it was starting to get dark and I thought something dodgy's going on here. Them letting us sleep, they're doing something. So I did not sleep, but the guy next to us was, because he was snoring away like anything and I just couldn't stop laughing. I just saw the corporals as it was getting dark creeping around us all, and I thought they're going to call us now, get out, we're under fire, just something like that. So I stayed awake, make sure all of my kit was near me, so I didn't want them to take anything, because I saw them taking people's kits and hiding them. Anything that's outside of your tent bit, they took. So I was like, after about half an hour or so, it was completely pitch black. They screamed to us, get up, you had to shove everything into your Bergen within like as quick as possible, take everything down. There were sticks all on the floor, so when you're trying to pick up tent pegs and they get lost, you're very rarely going to be able to find it. So that was the test. And a lot of people's stuff had been taken. So some of the guys were walking around with no shoes on and it was just really funny. Again, another late night. We had to iron all of our clothes again. We also had a bit of a more in-depth drill night. So that's what we had for the evening. Every single day, the same as Mod 1, they always write the itinerary for the next day on the board. So you can make sure that you spend your time during the night, late evening, whatever time you finish everything, to be getting ready for the next day. So the next night was another late night, another early rise, shower. You're getting in that kind of routine, but they make sure that you are tired for the first couple of days. Day 2 was strength and conditioning. We went into the main hall bit. They got us to do a warm-up where you're like running around and then touching toes, touch the floor, lie on your front, and then touch a colour, and then get into groups and touch a colour. So it was all a lot of fun, a lot of running around, warming your body up. We had to get the mats out, making sure all of them were perfectly in the line. For water bottles, they say to the brim. I made the mistake of taking a sip before it had been checked, and so he pulled me out to the front because it was just below the brim. And a few other people too were pulled out, and we were told to stand in the front looking at our team, and they were made to do a load of burpees while we watched. Really not the position you want to be in. I know why they do it, because they want to put shame on you for getting something wrong. So just a word of advice, make sure you don't take a sip of your drink. Make sure it's as full as it can possibly get before showing the PTs, because they're really strict on that. Sometimes some of the guys' water had dribbled out and it just wasn't the brim, and they were just so much trouble for it. So that was the first lesson learnt. So for strength and conditioning, we did a quick circuit. We did a bit of lunges, a bit of squats, crunches, push-ups. it wasn't really intense, but some people had different strengths. So some people were better at running. Me personally, I'm weaker on the running side, but better at strength side of things. So everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. After that, the same, go back, have a shower, get something to eat. Had baguettes for lunch. It's always with pop chips, a cereal bar, and apples. So that's what we had. At the start of the week, there are a number of corporals who are in charge of us, and then you have a sergeant who we normally saw more during the night time when we're going to bed, kind of here and there, especially with the officer too. And throughout the week, we were designated a corporal for our group. So the girls got a really nice man called Corporal Ribbons, was rifles. So we all had someone in charge of us. And for some reason, my corporal just liked nagging me. I was the person he chose to pick on. And so by day 2, it was kind of getting back into the swing of things. I know I had been there a couple of weeks ago, but I felt like from my Mod 1 experience, I was there and I got into the routine. It was only a weekend though, so it wasn't such a huge routine to get into. But when I did get back home from the Mod 1, I did feel the difference of, oh, I don't need to get up at 4:30, or oh, we're not having, baguettes for lunch, or just the littlest things. It just takes a very slight adjustment to. It's a bit like when you go back into the army life, you need to readjust yourself and getting used to the fast, high pressured pace, late nights, early mornings. And it does take me a few days to get into that rhythm again. But on day 2, I was not there yet with the whole rhythm of things again. So I just felt this huge amount of pressure on me from him constantly. And it did become very overwhelming. And I did want to cry. I actually wanted to cry. I was just thinking, this is getting a lot. But I didn't. I did suck it in thinking, this is it, just get on with it kind of thing. I know it's going to take me another day or 2 to get into the rhythm of things and you're going to be fine. So that was one thing. But after all of the weapon handling was done, and it was like at that time of day where they give you your time to start to wind down and relax around dinner time. It depends what you have on in the evening. But this evening, it was a little bit later because we had more lessons. We also had drills after our lessons, so it was a slightly later dinner. And for dinner we had grilled chicken with this curry sauce and potatoes. I just don't really fancy heavy potatoes. And my corporal, he just looked at me and put this huge pile of potatoes on my plate. He's like, you need it. So I had this huge stack of food that I had to eat. But after that, it was a friend of mine from the unit's birthday. I had already eaten pudding. We had pudding, which was a chocolate cake, absolutely delicious. I cannot fault Purbright for their food at all. All of their food was amazing. Then we got called into this classroom kind of room bit, which is in our block. And the corporals found out that it was my friend's birthday and decided to have this challenge. So everyone from their sections needed to designate a person. And this challenge was going to be eating cake off of the floor with our hands behind our backs in a race. All of the girls obviously ducked out, so I took one for the team, even though I had completely filled myself to the brim. I had to lay on the floor and I was saying, Corporal, I can actually feel these potatoes starting to make their way up. He didn't care, obviously. I had to shove my face into cake and eat it off the floor pretty much. I came last because I made the least effort. I just could not eat any more food. And it was just a whole lot of fun. And I started to get a grips of the corporal sense of humours. So the next day was a bit more like a rest day, so we didn't have PT sessions. This was all about getting our rifles out, so we had to go to the rifle unit. Everyone had a number. That number was the number of the rifle that we were going to have throughout the whole week. Everyone was like, wow, some of us hadn't handled rifles before, so this was really exciting. So this day was all about lessons and learning the procedures. So we had a number of procedures to learn, including NSPs, half NSPs, loading, deloading, all the safety checks, what we needed to do if the rounds get stuck in the chamber and things like that. So we had quite a bit to learn within a few days. I was told that if you're a full-time soldier, they give you about 2 weeks to learn this. And for reservists, we only had a couple of days. So there was a lot to learn within a short amount of time. For these lessons, we weren't in a classroom anymore. We were outside in a bit like this metal building, and it had this concrete slab and like seats so all of us could sit down, and then this like little teaching platform thing. But this concrete was not smooth, it was not nice, it was all rocky and rough. And our corporal was really kind and made us go in the prone position for such a long time, getting our elbows used to the terrain. Also, there was a lot of gravel outside, so he made us dig our elbows in the gravel just to get used to, well, they're quite soft now, but then it was just about building up that kind of like skin and getting used to it. He just made everything look so easy, just throwing this rifle around. For me, I was like having to have my hands out here because I'm so short. My arms would... So the next PT session that we had was tabbing. So we made sure that we had all of our Bergens weighed correctly. I think it was about 10 to 15 kg, and we had to be in full kit this time, carrying our webbing, our dummy rifle, not our real rifle when we're running. That's about 5 kg. That day I spent plastering up my feet because I thought if I get a blister, it's going to ruin the whole thing and slow me down. That tabbing session was the most challenging session out of the whole week. It was pretty intense. It was a max out session, so we were in the woods going up these pretty much vertical hills, doing sprints and then dropping our Bergens, running with our rifles and doing sprints. That PT session, you could really see who were the slightly weaker ones in their running. I definitely was not at the top, but luckily I wasn't at the bottom either. So one of the girls, she did struggle a lot, so the corporals were making her do burpees because she was just taking so long and she was complaining and crying. Yeah, it wasn't very nice. But after your PT sessions, they do a bit of stretching with you, a bit of a cool down. Do you have any injuries? And then return back to the unit, have a shower. And when we were getting changed for the shower, the girls were completely coated with these huge bruises everywhere. I'm guessing it's from where their rifles were hitting their sides. I checked myself. I didn't have a single bruise. They did. They were just so distraught about these bruises that the girl who was weak with running, she sent these photos back to her unit. And her unit got back to her and said, we're going to make a formal complaint. They shouldn't be making you run this hard. You haven't trained to the standards. Apparently, they only get to that standard when you have been in the army. Like, they slowly increase it when you're a full-time soldier. And that was too hard for a reservist. That's what they said. I'm not sure what all the standards are for reservists. So there was a lot of problems from that. I was in the middle of a shower, washing my hair, and we were called to the line. The worst possible thing that could ever happen, and I was always dreading that was going to happen. I ran out with my towel, sprinting, trying to put my uniform back on and my boots and everything. It was completely soaked in water. My hair was dripping everywhere. The reason why the sergeant had gotten us back on the line is because he wanted to explain to everyone that this is the army. Everyone needs to have a fitness standards, and just kind of explaining to us why we had to do the PT session that we did. They had received the complaint, so they wanted to know how everyone else was feeling about it all, I think. But they also wanted to put across, like, this is the army, this is the training that we have to do. So after that, the girls were complaining a lot about everything that had happened. They weren't happy with everything. I am someone who is wanting to go full-time, and reservist is something that I'm doing in the meantime to get my foot through the door and things like that. So I'm very passionate about the army, wanting to enjoy the training and embracing everything. I just said, well, this is the army. This is what I kind of expected. I was expecting to be pushed and challenged, and they just didn't understand where I was coming from, saying that I was weird for thinking like that. Like, how can you enjoy running and wanting to run like that? My friend from the unit, he's very passionate about training and the role too. And they were making comments about him. It was just completely unnecessary. So I just decided that I didn't want the negativity. I wasn't there for that. I was there to enjoy everything and to put 100% into everything that I was doing. I was going to enjoy it. Negative energy is really draining, so I just decided to distance myself a bit from the girls and to spend more time with the people from my unit and the guys, because there was just a complete different vibe going on. The guys just took everything on the chin and just so positive about everything and their energy, and they're just having a good time, and that's kind of the people that I want to be around. So for the rest of the week, that is pretty much what I did. Not something that I wanted to be doing, but for me to enjoy everything the best that I could, I felt like that was the best decision for me. So we are approaching towards the end of the week now, and the weapons handling test is in a day or so. This was a point where I was really starting to panic, because even though a lot of the day consisted of learning the tests, there was a lot to learn in a short amount of time. But being in a classroom, everyone has different questions, it can get very confusing, and a classroom environment with lots of other people isn't a way that I really can learn. So I can definitely say I was the weakest one out of the girls with the weapons handling test. 2 of the girls had shot before and they knew pretty much the procedures anyway. And so I think my corporal was getting a little bit frustrated with me because I wasn't able to grasp the procedures. And I figured out that if I was going to pass this test, I needed to move myself away from the classroom environment, because for me, that's just not a way that I can learn. I need to have the procedures written down on a piece of paper, be in a quiet environment, and that's not something that you can get a lot of in the army. So that evening, before the test, I was able to ask one of the corporals to go upstairs, because we're in a block, we were on the first floor, and there's like another floor above it with a load of dorms, which no one was using, no one was up there. So I asked to go up there into one of the classrooms just to sit down on my own with my rubber rifle, just to go through the procedures on my own so I could really learn this if I was going to pass. And very kindly, one of the corporals came up, sat down with me and spent a fair bit of time just going through everything with me. And I can honestly say that helped the most. The next day, we did have our weapons handling test. We had another lesson in the morning for about an hour or so, just to go through everything. If we had any more questions, we were going to have our corporal for our test. So whatever he has taught us, whatever way he has taught us, he's going to mark us on. But when it came to the test, I was missing out one thing, and then one of the other girls was missing out one thing. You go in 2 pairs. We were doing the test and running through it. I was taking slightly longer, but when you are the one taking slightly longer when the other person next to you is finished and sitting down and waiting for you, you feel that pressure. Even though I started to be able to deal with the pressure, because I was like, I'm going to do it properly. You're not timed on it, so you can take as long as you want. The corporal has to wait there, even though I could feel his eyes glaring at me. Literally, I just thought, I don't care. I am passing this test. It's going to take me as long as it's going to take me, because sometimes the rifles are old. They can get stuck in places. I just had that really dodgy one that you had to like bash some of the things out because it just wouldn't come out. So the corporal did have to wait a fair bit of time for me. But when we were doing our practice test, he didn't actually tell us it was the test. So we had finished and he said, "Congrats, you have passed." I was like, what? I was pretty adamant I was going to get something wrong and I was going to have to retake it. But we could breathe. And also, throughout that test, you do get asked to name a couple of pieces. But the relief of passing! And I celebrated in another ham sandwich, because that's what we had for lunch again. 3 girls who had went in also passed. All of the girls had passed. A few of the guys were still doing their weapons test. And I did ask a few of the corporals before the test saying, you know, what if we don't pass? Like, how many tries are we going to get? And they said, I don't think you will not pass, because they do give you a few tries to complete it and do it right, and you don't have to go through the whole procedure again. It's just the parts that you weren't able to get correct. That was a bit of relief, that you don't have to redo everything again just in case you get something else wrong. But a few of the guys, one of the guys who was also from my unit, was in the line of having to redo his tests. They had done it a couple of times with them all. I know that he knew what he was doing and he knew the procedures, but for some reason he just wasn't able to get it all right. I think it was the pressure just got to him. They gave him multiple tries, but unfortunately he just wasn't able to do it, and they did end up sending him back to unit, which was completely devastating. When you get RTU'd, you have to redo the whole week again. Yeah, but I don't know how often that actually happens. After our weapons handling, we went back to the block. Had to do a couple of hours of sweeping, making sure all of our dorms are cleared, taking everything apart and cleaning our rifles. We did that for about 2 hours. So of course I had to get my stash out, sit down with my food stash, you know, just take my time eating, refueling, because I knew we were going to be sitting there for a long time. And after you think you have cleaned your rifle, you need to go and show it to the corporals, and they always found something. But for that weapons test, I had borrowed a couple of sheets from my corporal with all the procedures, and I had folded it up and put it in my pocket, and I gave it back to him. He was not happy. He was like, I can't put this folded piece of paper back into my file. And I was like, oh no, I'll go and iron it for you. I'll actually iron this paper for you. So I went back to the dorm room, got my iron out, and started ironing papers. I was laughing to myself. It was that ridiculous. I did feel like me and the corporal had a very strange kind of bond. We could take the piss out of each other a bit. And some of the guys were saying, I don't know how you get away with talking to the corporals like that. So the next thing that my corporal decided to do is that when you go to the office, you need to stamp your foot, ow, and say your reg number, unit, and things like that. I'd never done it before. So I was like, sorry? My unit hadn't told me that we had to approach the office in that way. And as punishment, my corporal, because he's so kind to me, asked if I had my gas mask. And I said, gas mask? He also said, do you have your NBC suit? I was saying, yes. Well, go get that on. So while everyone was sitting there cleaning their rifles, I was putting my NBC suit on and my gas mask because they just found it completely hilarious. And let me just say, there wasn't just my corporal in there. There were also the other corporals too. So they were just having a whale of a time laughing at me. And then after that, he decided to make me do star jumps in it. And he said, can you still breathe in there? Because he's trying to get me out of breath and make me suffer. I was not going to give him the satisfaction in the slightest. And then after that, the other corporal started to join in. And he said, oh, do you know the gas mask procedure? So he was telling me all these procedures where you have to close your eyes, put your gas mask on, put everything on, strap it up within like a few seconds. And so we're just playing around, having fun. I think my corporal was pretty happy with me after that because he knew that I could understand his sense of humour. So for dinner that night, because it was quite a late one, we were supposed to have dinner in block again. We had got sent to go and collect the food, and the chefs had told us that someone had already taken our meals. So all the corporals were looking at each other like, how are we going to feed all these people? So they were kind enough to allow us to leave the barracks and go and get a takeaway. We were also allowed to go to a little shop that they have on the barracks. I went in there and I decided to get some grapes, some more protein bars, Diet Coke, and also I had to buy a few packets of Oreos because it's my absolute favourite. And I thought, oh, this is my morale. My morale throughout Mod 2 was boiled sweets. I didn't end up bringing biscuits this time because it ended up going absolutely everywhere on Mod 1, and coffee. So we're all very happy, and they had told us because we had done so well throughout the week so far, we were able to go to the fun centre, the relaxing centre, I'm not too sure what it's called. But it's a place where they have pool and Xbox. It's just a place for people to go and wind down and have a bit of them time and social time. It's more like a social hub. There was coffee, tea, Galaxy hot chocolate there, which was so delicious. I honestly had about 10 cups of that. And the guys who I sat down with, some of them were from infantry. It was really nice to just mingle with everyone and get to know them, a bit about themselves and their background, and because everyone has different stories. So for the last few days of Mod 2, this was just basically about the rifle range. This is why we had to all pass our weapons handling test to know that everyone who's going to have a rifle knows the procedures and is going to be safe in handling. Throughout our lessons, we were also shown the different shooting positions and principles, and that's something that we were incorporating into our shooting. But for someone who hasn't been on a rifle range before or hadn't handled a rifle before, It was quite nerve-wracking for the people who hadn't, because we were like, oh, but what if we forget something, or what if something happens, or just anything. We were all thinking that, but then we knew that there was going to be a lot of people around who was going to be keeping an eye on us. There was going to be a high level of safety, which was comforting. So when it was our turn to shoot, we were all starting off in the prone position. Throughout that day, that's all we stayed in. I hadn't ever loaded a magazine before, so that was also something new I had learnt on the rifle range. And the aim of the shoot was to have a target and shoot at the same target throughout the whole time. You just have to try and shoot at where it hit before. After that, you need to have your notepads out and mark your scores. The corporals would go and check it too, and then you have to patch everything up, and then it's the next person's turn. But when everyone started shooting, it just smelled like firework night because of the gunpowder, and it was just so exciting. I've been wanting to do this for such a long time, so after our first shooting lesson, we had another tab. And the reason for this is because they don't want you being all weak when you're handling your rifle. So they want you to be in the best position possible. So they put the PT session after the shoots. The girls were crying about it because they thought it was going to be the same type of tab that we had before. The older lady who was with us, for most of the exercises that we had done before, she hadn't done. The first testing run that we did, she had pulled a muscle, so she wasn't able to complete that. And for the running tab that we did before, she was crying a lot and was being sick. She missed out on that too. So this was the only thing that she was doing. So if you are wondering what they do about that, for the first run that she couldn't do, everyone thought that she was going to be returned to unit, but they did allow her to stay because some of the exercises that they do, you can do it back at your unit. So that's thankfully what they allowed her to do. So at the start, they did the bottle checks again. 2 of the guys ended up not having their bottles filled to the rim. He said to the PT, it was only a bit empty because I had taken a sip of it before. The PT, he screamed at him and made him do another couple of laps. He just looked like such a nice guy. But then I realised, gosh, if you get on the bad side of any of these, they're going to throttle you. This time we had pretty much the same weight in our Bergens. We also had our backpack had 5 kg in it. So what I was thinking was they were going to make us run with the Bergen on, with the backpack inside, and then take the backpack and do like sprints or fast run with that. But it ended up being just having the weight on our backs with our rifles in our same uniform as before, just walking up Heartbreak Hill and just doing kind of fast walks, and that was it. And I thought, really? So when I did get a word with the PT, I said to him, that wasn't what I expected. I don't want to complain necessarily that it was really easy, but then I was also thinking, but why was it so easy? Because it was supposed to be challenging. I don't feel like that was the workout. And he said, I have a feeling it's because there was the complaint about it. They weren't allowed to push us as hard again. Which for me was pretty disappointing because I was there to be challenged and I was there to be trained to be a soldier, to be in the best position for if I ever got deployed. And walking up hills with a weight on my back just wasn't going to cut it. But I don't know what they're like with everybody and all the other reservists that they train. So that night, all of us were packing our bags, making sure everything's cleared. We're all ready to go for the next day. I just couldn't believe how quickly time had went. I couldn't believe we were going home. For the last day or two of Mod 2, we had an introduction into map reading, and that was interesting, but all of us were just so tired. We were just sitting at the desk like... So, for the last day, they want you to get in as much shooting as possible. So, the last day was all about shooting. We spent the whole day there and we had a lot more rounds. We tried out so many different positions. They like you to try out the different positions to see which ones work for you, especially in the prone position if you like to have your feet outturned or you like to have one leg up. I personally found it really odd having my legs out, so I tend to have the one with the leg up. Also, they get you to go into the kneeling position, the squatting position. Standing up was the worst one for me. So they always have a corporal standing next to you, and it's normally like a corporal between two people. I had my Corporal Ribbons, which was really nice because I've had him for the whole week. When I was standing, my arms, like that's how far I actually have to have my hands out to handle this rifle. I was like, I don't know how to rest. How do you hold this the whole time? Because my arms are like giving way. It was just so heavy. And he just said, well, you have it out here and then you like bring it back slightly. And I was like, I can't, because that's as far and as close as my arm. I was like this. And that was it. When I'd finished my round, we went up to the target together. And I made a nice big hole in the target. It was my second time shooting, so I was really happy with how it went. My corporal was from rifles, and he had told me that it was a very good shoot. The little 12-year-old Loza started to jump around inside. So that was actually the main highlight throughout the whole of Mod 2. But halfway through, my corporal left, and he didn't return. He didn't say goodbye or anything. I don't know if that's an army thing or that's just him, but for some reason I was just really sad that he had gone and just not even said goodbye, because we had him for the whole of the week and I wanted to thank him for his help and everything else like that, but he just left. And then yes, after shooting we went back, got changed into our civvy clothes, which felt really odd, and I must say I was definitely ready to get back into normal clothes because you feel like a clone. Also, I forgot to mention, this is the photo of the unit. We had about 20 minutes to have a shower after our really heavy tab that we did and have our photo done, professional photo. When we went home, I was pretty much one of the last people to go because I was just lingering around. I just couldn't believe the time was up and I was just gotten used to everything, and I was the strange one who didn't want to go, so I was saying goodbye to all of the corporals. I was like, thank you so much for all of your help and everything. They just looked at me strangely and said, okay. I think that's maybe just an army thing. Overall, it was a very good experience. It had its pros and cons. Very different people this time. I definitely made the most out of it. It's just about putting 110% in and showing them that you are doing so. You don't have to be the strongest runner or the best at this or the best at that. As long as you're putting in the effort and they can actually see that, they will support you and guide you the best that they can. And everyone who was there at Pirbright, all the corporals, the sergeant, were amazing. And it made me feel really excited for all of the army experiences to come in Mod 3. For recommendations, all I would say is just prepare yourself the best that you can. If you are doing Mod 2, you do have a bit of experience from Mod 1. So just apply that to Mod 2 and just know that you're going to have training in there. Try and be as fit as you can and put yourself in the best position that you possibly could. I also would have loved to have gone through at my unit some of the weapon handling procedures for the test, so I could gain a little bit of knowledge and not go in there completely not knowing anything like I did. So that would have been really handy. But yes, just enjoy everything. Enjoy the challenges. It doesn't last forever. Even though some things can be a bit challenging at times, a bit tough, you may feel like things are getting overwhelming. It was just an incredible experience. So I hope you guys found this video useful. This is my experience from Pirbright. So good luck if you are doing your Mod 2, and I'll see you guys soon.